This has been the most confusing case that I have ever tried to look into, and I didn't think I could get even more confused than what I already have been. But after listening to this information, I don't even think there's a word at this point for how confused I actually am. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Daniel with Drunk Turkey Show just did a live where he was relaying to us the information that he got from Kristi Goncalves. Now, we saw her and Kaylee's father Steve making the rounds a lot in the beginning of this case, and then of course we know there was some stagnant time there where we didn't hear from the police or the families. Now, after all of the more current movements in the case, we've seen Steve coming out and talking a lot more, but when I tell you my confusion is at an all-time high, I have reached my tolerance threshold of confusion at this point. It's because the information that Daniel is telling us, some of these things coming from Kristi are like a complete 180 from some of the stuff that we've already been told. Apparently, they wanted to clear up when they actually received an outside phone call about something possibly happening to Kaylee. Because remember, we were told that the cops were not the first people to alert the Goncalves family that they were watching football and they received a call from Kristi's niece. And what she was telling her is that Kaylee had been pew-pewed, that there had been a situation at a party at that house and Kaylee had been one of the victims. Now, of course, we know that that's not true. Now, this call, like I mentioned, was at 1:32 p.m. They then verified that the police did not contact them until sometime between 4:45 and 5 p.m. And all it was the cops coming to their house, knocking on their door, letting them know that their daughter had passed away, handing them a card with a case number and a phone number on it, and telling them to call them the next day. It was just that cold. It got really interesting here because apparently around this 1:32 phone call from the niece and the involvement with the police finally showing up to let the family know what happened, that's apparently around the time that a bunch of rumors started going around about the cause of the situation, according to Kristi. Now, while the times are in a different set, okay, Dave and Kim's stories about Dave personally knowing via Snapchat messages before his clock-in time at work at 9:30. Now, he didn't go to work that day because of the situation, and he ended up staying home with his frat brothers, and his boss was well aware of the reason why he ended up not going into work that day. Dave, as most of you guys know, claims that whenever he opened up Snapchat that morning to get ready for work, he saw a bombardment of messages, and he was like, no thank you, it's too early in the morning, and he shut it off. So it wasn't until later on that morning, before his 9:30 original clock-in time, that he actually started reading the messages. Now, he claims that there were at least 6 at the least messages, group chat messages, that these messages have between 50 to 80 people in each one of them, and they are Greek-based. These group chats were exploding with the information about what happened on King Road, apparently at that morning time before 9:30. And in Dave's recollection, he states that in the beginning of all these messages, it's talking about it being a knife situation. But then very soon into the beginning of these message threads, in all of these message threads, according to Dave, it quickly turned into an OD. Now, that correlates perfectly with what Kristi has now apparently told Drunk Turkey. That parts of the rumors that started going around between the time they got the phone call from the niece and the time that the cops actually showed up is that these were overdoses on. Now, of course, they were told later on that that wasn't the situation, but do those two things not... I mean, come on, those two things are exactly the same. Even though the Goncalves family is aware of what Kim and Dave apparently have been coming around and stating, they are not calling them liars. They are just claiming that they do not personally know anyone with the exact same story. But Daniel is very clear that Kristi is not calling either one of them liars when it comes to their story. Now, when it comes to Jack, a lot of people have questioned, myself included, why whenever the family was frantically trying to get a hold of Jack and Kaylee and Maddie after they got that phone call from the niece around 1:30 in the afternoon, that he'd never answered the phone. Now, we just all, I guess, assumed it was a little earlier, maybe. I don't really know why, but Kristi claims it's because at the time his phone was getting blown up, he was with the cops. He was one of the first people that the cops talked to and interviewed. And they actually did keep his phone in custody for quite a few days before they finally gave it back to him. So that's one of the other reasons why the family is so confident that he's not involved. And I know that the media tried to spin this into this love story situation, because all of the big media streams, and I mean a lot of channels too, I mean mine included, I was really focusing on the possibility that Jack did something because he was upset that Kaylee was moving to Texas to do her own thing and have her own career without him. And you know, those stories usually do end up pretty messed up. I mean, that's literally what we talk about the majority on here. So whenever it came out that things weren't so hunky-dory between Jack and Kaylee relationship-wise, of course, that's the first thing that we went to. And I know that there's been a couple of faces made at Jack by certain family members, and those things have been questionable. But they do claim that they took photos and videos of Jack's body in a complete 360. There was no injuries on him. The cops have cleared him. He is completely heartbroken and apparently still taking care of Murphy from the social media posts that we are seeing. And I know it's probably because of cases like Scott Peterson and Lacey Peterson that whenever the family is so adamant that the deceased family member's partner is innocent, most of the time that's not the facts. They have photos and videos of his body, and his phone was looked through by the cops for days. But he also took a DNA test, so anything that was found at the house, his DNA was matched to. Now, honestly, knowing that so many people were in and out that house and that Jack was already a constant, most likely, even though they were not together. I mean, we saw them talking together at the corner club. Them having his DNA and then excluding it doesn't really mean a lot to me, because his DNA would have been in part to that house regardless anyway. But everything else, I can definitely see why the family is okay with Jack. And this is where things start taking like a 180. So, whenever Steve did an interview with News Nation, it was either right after the grand jury or it was right after that next Monday where we had the arraignment date. But I recall perfectly Steve claiming that Dylan and Bethany were talking. That they were talking, that people were talking to them. The girls were talking. The girls were being talked to. Do y'all remember this? Because according to Kristi, the entire family has not talked to Dylan or Bethany. According to Kristi, they do not know anything else about Dylan and Bethany's side of the story besides what is in the PCA. That's it. They know just as much as we do, apparently, when it comes to these two. And I don't understand who's accurate here. Or I don't know if Steve missaid what he said to make it sound as if the girls were talking to other people, like other people involved with the victims, because that's precisely how his verbiage made it sound. And now Kristi is claiming, no. Which one is it? I did a very detailed timeline video because I'm trying to pinpoint exactly whenever the cops actually had eyes on Brian Kohberger, and trying to figure out the truth behind all of this genealogy testing stuff. Now, that video releases tomorrow. And in that video, I mention something that lots of people have talked about, the fact that the PCA shows the time of the incident to be between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. per Dylan and Bethany's cell phones, even though the vehicle they are claiming is Brian's sped out of the neighborhood at 4:20 a.m. And I explained the reason why this 5 minutes is so important in this video that's coming out. Now, Kristi is claiming that the PCA has it listed that way because Dylan called everyone else in the house. And I'm going to assume that those phone calls probably ended at 4:25 a.m. So that right there is kind of more clarification that little Miss Dillon, because I'm going to keep calling her that until I feel the need not to, was very aware that there was a situation. She was not frozen. She was not in shock from watching some man clad in black walk past her bedroom door. If she was functioning enough to dial that many phone numbers and try to get a hold of people after hearing things that we're told that she didn't hear, then that's just more proof that that 911 call could have been made at a precise timing, and that maybe somebody's life could have possibly been saved. But the problem with that is that even though Kristi has been hearing this, she's not claiming where she heard it from, but she is hearing it. In the call logs that they have from Kaylee, there are no missed calls from Dillon around 4:25 or at all that morning. So where'd that rumor come from, and why are the parents of the victims just hearing about it without seeing the physical proof in what they have on their side? If anything, that just makes Dillon look more sketch. And something else that Kristi was able to validate is about those IDs. You know, the ones that were found in a glove in a box up in Pennsylvania. Now remember, Chris Como and Jennifer Coffindaffer came out together claiming that these IDs were related to the King Road victims. And then, you know, a few months later, little Miss Coffindaffer, you notice that my little miss has a certain ring for how I feel about someone. Coffindaffer then went on Dateline talking about how they were not from King Road. Well, Kristi claims she's hearing that they are not. They are not related whatsoever to King Road. They don't know who they belong to. I don't even think that Daniel mentioned whether Kristi believed they were male or female IDs. She just knows that she was told not related to the victims. I almost didn't get to sit in and listen to this little live that he was doing because I had so many things going on today. I have had a very stressful day. But I'm glad that I sat down to listen because regardless of how crazy and intense this case is, it is my relaxation spot. So I do feel a lot less stressed now that I've been able to do a little research on the case. The information that Daniel is relaying to us from Kristi is interesting because, like I mentioned, it is filling in a couple of little pieces. But now I just have more questions because some of the things that she said are the opposite of what we have been originally hearing. Another one of those things that we're just going to have to wait and find out about. But that is it for now, you guys. See y'all.